Hello. Thank you for... Are we on the air? Because my mic doesn't sound like it's on. Okay. Hello. Welcome to the January 29th, 2025 ZBA meeting. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rich, if you could read the preamble, please.
Absolutely. Good evening to those in attendance and watching at home. For the benefit of those who have not previously attended a zoning board hearing, the procedure is as follows. Petitions will be heard in the order that they appear on the agenda. However, the chair may change the order at their discretion. The board will treat all petitioners, their representatives, abutters, and other interested parties fairly and with respect. The petitioner will be asked to give an overview of their petition and read through their response to the criteria applicable to their case, allowing the board to ask questions after each item. State law and local ordinances establish a criteria that must be met in order for the board to grant approval to a petition, and it's a petitioner's responsibility to demonstrate that they have met each criterion. Following the presentation, the chair will open the floor to the public for public comment, either in favor or opposed to the request. If necessary, an opportunity for rebuttal will be offered to the petitioner and public. However, discussion will not be allowed to devolve into back and forth arguments. All comments made shall be directed toward the chair. Should a question be asked, the chair will pose the question to the petitioner. After the chair will close the public hearing and the board will deliberate and vote on the petition. At this time, please silence all mobile devices.
Thank you very much, Rich. So the next ZBA meeting is February 26, 2025 at 6:30 p.m., and that will be in the Matthew Thornton room. Tonight, Scott, Rich, and I Patrick Dwyer are in attendance. Since both of the items on the agenda are rehearings or request for rehearing, there will be no public testimony, so that we will not be swearing anybody in today. The first request for rehearing is from Lisa M. and John J. Sweeney, petitioner owners. Request for rehearing of case ZBA 2024-28, in which the board granted a variance under section 3.02 of the zoning ordinance to permit the subdivision of a property into two lots, with one lot having 150 feet of frontage and one having 227.10 feet, whereas 250 feet of frontage is required. The parcel is located at 54 Parkhurst Road in the R1 Residential by Map and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 7A, Lot 4, case number ZBA 2024-28. So as I had mentioned, this is a request for rehearing, so the board can discuss, and I'll open it up to you gentlemen to weigh in your thoughts on the rehearing.
So my thoughts are, I reviewed the letter that was provided, and the majority of these issues sound like things that really should be addressed by the planning board, not by us.
Can you specifically state which of the ones that you feel, based on the letter from Penichico Law, can you state which one of those? I think they put in 8. If you could say which, you don't have to read through the whole letter, but if you could kind of summarize which ones you think are more apt to be more addressed by the planning board.
I guess
I can help.
Yeah.
So, not just the planning board, but so number 7, I believe, is that the one that refers to? Number 7 is more of an ordinance, not a ordinance, but building and safety, which is not under the zoning board's authority. It's in the same document, but it's like ours ends, I believe, at where the building code starts.
Okay.
And then that gets into like where the fire code is adopted, is where it says there. That's enforced by the fire department, fire chief, building code, right? And then 8 is the same. That's what I got from looking this up, right? So like the 20-foot turnaround. Right. Basically, those two were not in purview of this board,
Okay.
as far as I could tell.
So item 3, discussing the shed. This was not part of our discussion, nor was it part of our decision. Maybe it does need to be addressed, maybe it does need another variance, but that had nothing to do with what we discussed. So that's not relevant to what we're talking about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Item number 4, that's something that we really should have the planning board evaluate.
The topography.
Yeah, number 5
Mhm.
actually specifically calls out the planning board. 6, also not relevant to us because we do not need to know the specifics of a driveway because that's related to planning board. And then what Scott mentioned for 7 or 8. So although these are all good points, they're not particularly specific to ZBA. And I can tell you right now, I don't think the outcome would change if we reheard it.
Scott?
Yeah, I agree with that. The only question I had was, knowing that the variance was granted for the smaller road frontage, is the intent there that there will be a driveway? I mean, that's the fact, but is that part of the
Yes,
consideration?
yes.
And then knowing what a driveway is going to require, we don't, right?
So what ends up happening a lot of times, and this is where things get confusing, is when petitioners bring us a petition, they know they're going to sit in front of us. They know they're going to sit in front of the planning board, so they just have one
It's
set
the
of-
same one, right?
So they bring their stuff with them. They'll show us plans, but we can't sit there and dissect their plans just because they showed it to us. That's not what we do.
Right.
We have to make sure that we, blind ourselves to the stuff that the planning board is going to be evaluating and stick specifically to zoning ordinance.
Yep.
So there are some pieces of zoning in this. The shed is a good point because we did not discuss the shed. However, that also wasn't a topic of conversation. If the petitioner was planning on removing the shed before the construction, that's their prerogative, and we don't need to discuss that.
Yeah.
If they decide they want to keep the shed there, then that becomes a second conversation, and that's something that they're going to talk to the community development office about. What do we do with the shed? And then they'll probably get advised to create another variance, and they'll be back in front of us, and then we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna go to their house and beat them over the head over their shed. That's not what we do.
Right. Yeah, I've got no issue with the shed.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, and so when you look at what the original, and Casey can, back me up on this, when you look at the original of what variance and what they came forward for, they were asking for a subdivision. And so what we were, in essence, what we're looking at here is, where 250 feet of frontage is required, and 150 is going to be the frontage on one property, and 227 is going to be the frontage on the other. We're being asked, is that doable? Would we permit that?
Yeah.
And that's where we're being, now, when you start talking about like turnaround in the driveway, or composition of the driveway, that's not relevant for a
zoning.
question, for a variance on frontage.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm correct, that's what this variance was originally about, was the frontage, correct?
Oh, yes, the only thing that was requested for this specific variance request was related to road frontage.
Was road frontage. So our call, and I think if I remembered, the motion was granted, or this variance was granted. This was based on the frontage. So to Rich's point, the shed was nothing.
Right.
It didn't.
That's nothing to do
play
with the
into it.
frontage.
And driveway composition doesn't have to do anything with frontage. Turnaround, nothing to do with frontage. That's not, that wasn't part of our reasons for making this motion, as far as when we took that into consideration. Now, planning board will have to, because that's the next step, is planning board. The planning board would have to hear all that.
So, yeah, so they did get their conditional approval before they came to the zoning board. So they, in this situation, they actually went to the planning board first.
So has the
and then
planning board
zoning
sent the same information, the same letter, like 3-page document here of, because when I read through this, the majority of it seems to be planning related.
Yeah, so there was an appeal against the planning board decision, but the appeal process for the planning board is different than the appeal process for the zoning board. So that went
Okay.
straight to the housing board of appeals. While with zoning board, they can't go straight there. They have to ask for a rehearing first. It's just part of the process. So that's why they have this before you tonight. 'Cause
My question was more, this does
sorry.
not look like it focuses on zoning. So
yeah.
where we just sent something that was also sent to them. Because if that's the case, this makes a lot more sense. If not, I'm really confused why so much planning stuff was incorporated in a zoning board letter.
Yeah, I'm sure, I have read through the appeal that went to the Housing Board of Appeals, and I'm sure, if I remember correctly, a lot of similar points were made.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion?
I'll make
Unless
a
there's
motion.
any further discussion. Scott, do you have any further questions or discussion?
No, I just wanted to get that clarification as to, like, it was at road frontage, or are we considering like I said, the makeup of the driveway, which sounds like that's more planning than.
Mr. Chair, would it be okay if I just made a clarifying
Please.
point, if that's okay?
Please.
And I, just so it makes you feel better, the issue brought up with the shed, I forget what question that was, what number?
Number three.
Number 3, thank you. So we were kind of confused by that point, and we went back to the staff memo that was distributed to you and the other board members for that meeting, and it was simply a copy and paste error from another totally separate irrelevant case.
Oh, so that has nothing to do with this?
Nothing to do
Okay.
with it, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we would never require a legal non-conforming structure to meet today's setback. So even if that lot line was being moved,
I almost
I'm
asked
yeah.
because I do not remember that ever being brought up.
Neither do I.
yeah,
So I was completely
it was a
confused.
mistake on staff, and we
Okay.
should have caught that typo, but unfortunately it was not caught before it was distributed, so I apologize
No
about
worries.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry, before I make a motion,
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that,
On the back
but,
there.
but before I make my motion, yeah, I see it.
Yep.
Before I make the motion, I just wanted to point out that the only reason why I'm making this motion is because I do not see, if we rehear this, any material information that would change the way this is voted on. From a zoning board perspective, I see a lot of planning board stuff in here that may change planning board's decision, but nothing that'll change zoning boards. So I'll go ahead and say, I'd like to make the motion to deny a rehearing of case CBA 2024-26, in which the board denied a variant. Oh, I'm on the wrong one, aren't I?
Granted a variance.
Yep, I'm on the wrong one,
Here.
sorry. Nope, I got it. I just grabbed the wrong sheet. I make a motion to deny rehearing of regarding case CBA 2024-28, in which the board granted a variance under section 3.02 of the zoning ordinance to permit a subdivision of a property into two lots, with one having 150 feet of frontage and the other having 227.10, whereas 250 feet of frontage is required.
I have a second?
A second.
All right, motion made by Rich, seconded by Scott. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? 3-0-0. And the rehearing request is denied. Okay. Next is Dino and Josephine Frioni. Request for rehearing of case number ZBA 2024-26, in which the board denied a variance under section 2.02.1A, sorry, 2.02.1.A.3 G of the zoning ordinance to permit an accessory dwelling unit where the owner occupies neither the ADU nor the primary dwelling unit. The parcel is located at 6 Hayes Way in R1 Residential by Soils and Aquifer Conservation District, tax map 6C, lot 197, case number ZBA 2024-26. All right, so in this variance, I read through the, what they're coming back with, and, the letter is, they're talking about things that, I think the denial of this, I guess when I had some, and maybe you guys can help me out with this, is that the variance would not be, you talked about the granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest, and that the spirit of the ordinance would not be observed. I didn't think that those were the reasons that we utilized. And if they were, their explanation for it doesn't make sense because,
I believe those are the two I think I called out. I didn't read the, but I think I called those out. I
I'm
know
just
that.
double checking.
Actually, Scott watched it. He probably has a better memory of this than I do.
For this one.
Yeah.
I rewatched the previous one we discussed specifically. I watched the whole thing last month, but
Hold on a second, hold on.
as far as why this one was denied,
Um,
got them right here.
One of the things that came up in the hearing was that they were going to rent out the primary unit and rent out the ADU, turning them into two separate apartments.
Yep.
And I understand we've changed the wording of what an ADU is over the last 13 years or so I've been on the board. But I don't see renting two separate units as the spirit of an ADU.
So, and I agree, and that was where we disapproved based on spirit of the ordinance and the spirit of an ADU. That was, I do remember that. And then the other one was contrary to public interest. And I gotta be honest with you, I think Chuck was the one that brought up contrary to public interest. So I wasn't sure what he necessarily directly was referring to. But certainly, I don't think that it met the spirit of the ordinance, which is to build an ADU for a family member. I mean, that's the reason that, people build the ADUs is they have an aging family member or a family member that can't necessarily live on their own. This, for what it's worth, it came off as more of a rental property than it did an ADU.
Yep.
And,
I mean, you talk about the spirit of it, right? Or even the letter is owner occupied, and it is where it was read that there's no rule as far as like who lives there, but owner occupied is clearly there in the ordinance. That's what they asked for the variance, but
I'll be honest, when they said the owner was not going to be there, my thought was, okay, so they'll rent it to a family that needs the accessory dwelling unit. And I thought, that makes sense. This variance makes sense. But then when they said that they're looking to rent it to two separate families, that doesn't sound like ADU anymore.
right.
So,
So there, to the point with the public interest, they mentioned threatening public health. I think it's the the spirit of the ordinance. I'm sorry. Spirit of this ordinance is as we discussed as an ADU is the reason the ADU variance exists is so that people can build a home or a living space for a loved one that can't care for themselves or needs home care like that. It has nothing to do with external changes to the property, which is, they mentioned that, and that wasn't anything that we had brought up. As far as the contrary to public interest, I think contrary to public interest would probably, I would imagine, if you're turning this into a rental property, you're gonna have multiple cars, you're gonna have, that could potentially even impact local housing. And that actually also sets a precedent that we don't want to have in Merrimack, where people are gonna start taking their houses and building ADUs and then potentially renting them out and I don't, that's not something that I necessarily, a precedent I don't think that the Merrimack wants to go down at this moment, so.
That's basically my main issue with it, is it sets a precedent that you can create an ADU and then create two rental properties in a single-family home, and you start building that out across town, and you've created a problem.
and that's why we have all the restrictions we do have in the ADUs, such as shared utilities, to
Yep.
prevent that type of behavior. So if they're shared utilities, I don't even know how they would operate renting out two separate families unless they plan on unsharing the utility, or is that no longer a
You
requirement?
just include it in the rent.
Oh, includes,
I mean,
okay.
there's
There's ways
there's
to do
probably
it.
ways around it, I mean,
Yeah.
not to get into
That's
that.
that's easy to
Yeah.
to deal with.
Do you have a question about that?
Well, do we still have the requirement that shared utilities have to happen with an ADU?
If they're attached, the utilities need to be shared. If they're detached, the utilities do not have to be shared. So this one is attached, so yeah, the utilities have to be shared.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
All right, do we have any further items of discussion, concerns, questions?
Nope. Do you?
Do I have a motion?
Do you want to make it? Or
Yeah,
you want-
I
Alright.
can make it. Again, same thing here. I don't see that this anything changes with a rehearing on this, the spirit of the ordinance is what it is. So I make a motion to deny the rehearing case regarding case ZBA 2024-26, in which the board denied a variance under section 2.02.1.a.3 G of the zoning ordinance to permit an accessory dwelling unit where the owner occupies neither the AD or the primary dwelling unit.
I would second that.
Okay, motion made by Scott, seconded by Rich. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 3-0. The rehearing is denied. All right, on to the next order of business is the minutes, I believe, right? Or is there any comments from staff? Discussion items from staff?
No comments from staff.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. I need to double check something here. Page 2, line 84, it says that Patrick voted in opposition. This was the petition we just heard. I didn't vote in opposition. I voted to, I mean, I could pretty much, I'm pretty sure I did. I guess I need to go back and check the tape on that.
Would you like to make your approval of the minutes conditional on us going back and looking at the tape just to verify that that's correct?
Please.
Because you can make that part of your
Yes.
motion. Yeah.
Yes. So other than that, actually, one of you want to make a motion to approve the minutes? Continue.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes on the contingency of the, was it line 84?
Okay. Scott?
Second.
All right, motion made by Rich, seconded by Scott. All in favor? All right, all opposed, and abstained, 3-0-0. So the minutes, and then if there's nothing left to discuss? All right, if there's nothing left to discuss, can I have a motion? Unless either one of you have questions.
Nope, no questions. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn, seconded by
Me.
Rich.
Second,
All in
sorry.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion adjourned. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.